So if you watch Monday Night Football, and I most certainly did, my Browns were playing the Bengals, you might have noticed a narrative floating around that has become more and more real as the years have gone on. And it's going to be about Joe Burrow, but it's really been about two franchises, the Browns and the Bengals. And that is Joe Burrow has never beaten the Cleveland Browns. He beat everybody last year, except for Cleveland, right? He swept the bank. He didn't sweep the Bengals. You can't sweep your own team. But he swept the Ravens. He swept the Steelers. Got swept by the Browns. Now, he only played in one of those games, right? And then the year before, the Bengals, I believe, got swept by the Browns as well, the year previous. And again, Joe Burrow only played in one of those games. And then now we're one more game into this season. Did Joe Burrow play in both of those games? He did. He played in both games in 2020, I believe. So that's 0-3, and then we get here, he 0-4. Threw an interception in almost every one of them games at like the beginning of it. And people are starting to wonder, well, what was it, right? Because the joke used to be, if you aren't familiar with the Browns and Bengals rivalry, the joke used to be the Bengals can't beat Baker Mayfield because Baker Mayfield had like a 6-1 record or something crazy like that versus the Bengals. Now it's Kevin Stefanski's 5-0 against the Bengals. The fact is that since 2018, since Andy Dalton has not been the starter for the Bengals, their record versus the Cleveland Browns have drastically went downhill. And, you know, for a while, the joke was that it was Baker Mayfield doing that because Baker Mayfield would have like these 5 touchdown games versus the Bengals. Like he would look like a completely different quarterback than he had the whole year against the Cincinnati Bengals, which, by the way, Baker Mayfield technically does come to town against the Bengals next week. We'll see how that goes for the Panthers. But the question is now being posed, no Baker Mayfield, right? And this is hilarious to me because this is actually what people did all summer about the Browns, right? Where they kind of put all the success that Cleveland had on Baker Mayfield's back. And this is the same thing with the Bengals, right? It's another microcosm of this, right? Everybody thought that Baker was the reason we were beating the Bengals, when in reality, the best 2 players on the team have been Myles Garrett and Nick Chubb. That did not change, right? Baker Mayfield was never the best player on the Cleveland Browns when he was on the Cleveland Browns. He was a decent quarterback for a couple of years, but he was never the best player on the Cleveland Browns. And that's the issue that the Cincinnati Bengals have, is that they really don't have answers for our best players, for the Cleveland Browns' best players. And that showed up last night because the player that they have the least amount of answers for is Myles Garrett. And honestly, this befuddles me, their strategy against Myles Garrett, man. Myles Garrett been beating down the Bengals since 2018. I don't know what he did in 2017, but that team went winless. So I assume that he didn't do much, right? But 2018 and on, since he's been on decent teams, he has just mauled the Cincinnati Bengals. And like, I get it, in 2018, not everybody was on the "we gonna triple team Myles" program. 2019, more teams got on it, but like it wasn't until 2020, really, till everybody was like on the, hey, let's just put everybody over there with Myles Garrett. Like, let's just not play that game with Myles Garrett. You know, let somebody else beat us. Let's not play these games. But the Bengals are like the only team, especially in the division, that consistently just say, hey, man, we might chip you, but we're going to leave Jonah Williams on the island. And Jonah Williams can't handle that, man. There's not a lot of tackles that can handle being on the island with Myles Garrett, because Myles Garrett's really good. He's freakishly athletic. He has bend, dip, strength. He literally has it all. Like, he's impossible to block one-on-one. That's not even me being hyperbolic about it. He is literally impossible to block. Like, look at the dudes that they asked to block him and then look at Myles Garrett and tell me that that's a fair fight. It's really not. And that's what they keep doing to Jonah Williams. And it makes absolutely no sense to me that they continue to operate in such a manner. How is it? Like, I get it. If this were like a couple of games, like one season of Myles doing this to you, okay, cool. Yeah, you messed up, you'll make the adjustment. It's been since 2018. Zach Taylor's whole run as a coach, this has happened, and they've made no adjustments. No adjustments. Part of that is because They refuse to keep tight ends in. Part of that is because they're not built in a way. They're a spread offense. They're gonna take some single blocking opportunities. Like that's just what they're gonna do. And they continue to allow Myles Garrett to run roughshod over them, right? And it's not like other teams have not figured this out, right? The Pittsburgh Steelers, their solution to Myles Garrett has been, let's just get rid of the ball really quick. And they get rid of the ball super quick when they play Myles Garrett. The Ravens solution has been, we're going to rotate everybody over to Myles Garrett. And that has had varying levels of success. I think it really was successful early on in Myles' career, but the last couple of years, it hasn't been as successful as he has had great games both years of the last 3 games versus the Ravens. So I don't think that strategy works as much as it used to, as he's figuring out how to beat triple teams. Myles Garrett's a ridiculous player, man. He's beating triple teams, double teams with ease. So now that that's not working, like they're going to have to reconfigure. But the Bengals strategy has been the most head scratching, which is Jonah got him. Right? I haven't seen Myles Garrett whip a left tackle like this since Andrew Villanueva was on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Because if Steeler fans will remember, Myles used to give that man lessons. To the point to where Andrew would talk about nothing but blocking Myles up to the week before he played Myles. And that's really the problem for the Bengals, right? When they go up against these elite pass rushers, they have no plan. Like maybe, or their plan sucks, whatever it is, right? Because what they want to do in reality, the Bengals, is hold the ball and get a big play to Chase or T. Higgins, right? But when you go up against an elite pass rusher, that's just not going to be there. You got to figure out other ways to create and get these big plays. You got to figure out, end arounds. You got to scheme some stuff up against blitzes and elite blitzers, because if you don't, they're going to control the game, right? The more vanilla your game plan is versus a team with the TJ Watt, with the Aaron Donald, with the Myles Garrett, with the Micah Parsons, name your favorite pass rusher, Von Miller, whoever it is, they're going to destroy you. Because if the game plan is to play regular football, the reason nobody plays regular football against those guys is because you can't do it. Those guys will get there in 2.5 seconds. But the Bengals continue to just allow it to happen. And it's kind of inexcusable, my bad, if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, because, dog, it's not like Myles Garrett just popped up on the scene. He's in his 6th year or something like that. Like, he's been around for a minute. He's been doing this to you for a very long time. He's been doing this specifically to Jonah Williams for a long time. For a long time. For a very, 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 very long time. Like, he made Joe Burrow, the girl from Stranger Things, about to get summoned from Vecna because he just looked down at the schedule and said, oh, Jonah Williams, I'm about to cook that. Let me go extravagant with Halloween. And I'm going to be able to talk my stuff because I know I'm going to have a good game because that's Jonah Williams. Like, that's what he's thinking. He sees Jonah Williams over there and he goes barbecue chicken. They're going to let me one-on-one barbecue chicken. And it's at the point to where even Jonah Williams knows it. He be taking big, deep breaths whenever he sees Myles on the other side trying to get on Lael Collins instead of him. And that's the Bengals' biggest problem when it comes to the Browns. We could joke about it. Like Nick Chubb, he has pretty good games against the Bengals. Baker Mayfield has had pretty good games against the Bengals. Jacoby Brissett had a pretty good game against the Bengals. Absolutely all 3 of those things are definitely true. But the reason their game plan keeps getting crashed is because they can't keep Joe Burrow clean, right? Martin Emerson steps up, plays a big game. Greg Newsome steps up, plays a big game. But who dominated? Myles Garrett. Why did he dominate it? Because y'all did the same thing y'all did last year with Myles Garrett, which is absolutely nothing. And I don't want to say they did absolutely nothing. They did try to throw quick passes. Myles was ready. You know what I mean? Like, I want to give some grace because it's not like figuring out a game plan to stop Myles Garrett is an easy thing to do, right? I can think of like 2 coaches that have had a successful game plan for Myles, and like they're 2 of the greatest coaches of all time, Mike Tomlin and Bill Belichick. And what they do is not certainly something you could just look at and replicate, right? You have to have certain players and pieces and think about that. So it's not like this is easy. This is a very hard thing to do, to stop a TJ Watt, to stop a Myles Garrett. Like, I'm not trying to say that Zach Taylor's an idiot or anything like that. But what I am saying is, man, they're not even trying to find new solutions. They're just like doing the same stuff. They're doing the same stuff. And it keeps happening. And if I were a Bengal fan, I'd be furious about that. Because Myles been the problem. Like, we joke about Baker, but Myles been a problem. That's the problem for the Bengals, is Myles Garrett and their inability to stop Myles Garrett. And that's why the Bengals can't beat the Browns. Now, will the Browns turn this into a turnaround for their season? Well, who knows? Will the Bengals let this turn their season down? Who knows? But they're in a bad position at 0-3 in the division. Now, it would be very hard for them to win the division given that they're already a game back. And honestly, being 0-3 in the division is not going to be the greatest for you when it comes to tiebreakers either, for the wild card. So now they're in a big hole that they dug themselves early in this year. We'll see what happens with the Bengals. With the Browns, we'll see what happens with them. 3-5. They get to play a Miami team that's beatable. They get to play a Tampa Bay team that's beatable. So you could see them getting to 5 wins before Deshaun Watson comes back, and then all of a sudden they got a chance. A lot of football left to be played in the North, and that division is wide open. But y'all have a great day. Sorry about the hiccup. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.